What is going on, Cyber fam? Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good weekend. So over the weekend, I think on the video where I expressed my concerns about Palantir, there was a gentleman that posted up actually quite a few questions that were quite nuanced. So I thought actually it deserved a video. I did respond to you, man, but I thought it deserved a video just so other folks can see what you wrote, as well as I can elaborate on it a little bit as well. Now, before we get started, there's been a lot of subscribers sort of new to this channel. This whole thing is kind of new to me too, so I really appreciate you guys voting with the subscribe button. I'm really hoping it can provide value here, but just to keep in mind here, like, this is not specifically a Palantir channel, right? I just want to focus on how, like, the research that I use to invest and how I look at things and that kind of stuff. So if you're here just for that, then feel free to just watch those videos, and it's totally up to you, man. And guys, last thing, let's just keep in mind, I don't like work at Palantir. I'm just trying to give you and shine some light on some of the tech aspects from my personal experience. Of course, things might be similar, might be different. We won't really know unless like an insider comes out and stuff like that. So just use what I tell you to maybe construct some kind of like a thing for yourself. If you're an investor, use that as an investment strategy. But I'm trying to shine some light on existing processes. Now, Palantir could very well be doing it differently and completely innovate all this stuff. I'm not sure, but I can only express to you my personal experience and what I think it is, which is what I use to invest, of course. So, do your due diligence. I always suggest that. So take that for what it is. And I can't believe I have to say this, but you already know, guys, this is not investment advice. This is just what I use. So play with that accordingly. Anyway, before we get started, so these questions that Black Raider had brought up are primarily about, I think it was something along the concerns, but it's also touches on a lot of sort of some of the core competencies as to what I think Palantir could address here, right? Are there some things here that are issues and maybe could be caveated? Yeah, for sure. We're still in the early stage, so I just want to explain some of these. So let's go through these real quick, all right? Okay, so Black Raider asks, so you said that Palantir went more than optimization, which differentiate them from Snowflake. Is going beyond optimization actually the thing that Snowflake or other competitors can actually take, or is it a whole different development and core business roadmap? Okay, so this whole like optimization thing that I was trying to address, right? This is based on that, I'm assuming, which is a fantastic question. So yes, it is a different approach. So the reason it's a different approach, right, is let me pull up. Okay, so the reason it's a different approach is because, like, you gotta understand, it's not the current business model of IT solely revolves around cycles, right? So before we even get to this point, there's like directors and managers and all this other stuff inside the departments. And like I told you before, unless you work for a bleeding edge company, which there's a lot of, and I've worked in that before, even in those cases, a lot of the directors and managers are just trying to stay industry average and not go too much into the bleeding edge, right? Like you do most of the stuff is sort of industry average, and then a few things you're gonna go like really crazy, like new, and hope that it sticks. And the reason for that actually is not because like if you do it you're gonna die or anything like that. It's more because it's hard to hire people. That's one of the bigger reasons actually. Like once you start doing stuff that's way out there, it's hard to actually pick up folks, because when you spin it up yourself, right? Like if you're a company and you spin up all the software yourself on the bleeding edge, you have to maintain it. You have to be, your developers have to do that. And you got to keep in mind, this IT, the turnaround is crazy. Like I've only stayed in companies for maybe like a year and a half max, and then I've left, right? And I've written software for these companies like from scratch. So we got to keep that in mind. This is exactly why actually SaaS is so high. There's so many SaaS companies that are worth so much, right? Mainly because a lot of these managers, they know that, and they're like, you know what, why don't we just go buy software, so then we don't have to worry about our development staff leaving, and even if they do, we'll just train them up on the third party, right? So that's why these companies exist, right? So of course Snowflake is going to take that model and completely write it for the new world, which is big data oriented and AI oriented and all this other stuff. And that's fine. I'm not shitting on Snowflake or anything. I think they're a great company. The problem is they're addressing today's business model. The thing that Palantir is doing is not addressing any business model. It's addressing stuff that they're saying, like, we have our core competency, we're going to start building on top of what we have, and we're going to have all these crazy offerings. If you notice, if you guys actually watch the videos, like and there's another question about this down below, but their offerings are actually full ecosystems. Okay, so like, anyway, just we'll get to that in a second, but just keep in mind there's a people aspect to this, right? And the whole managers and developers thing, like they're looking for quick wins, guys. Okay, everything is budget based, everything is like cyclical, right? So everything is like based on, oh, how long is this project going to take, how much is it going to cost, what is the yield, you know, all this other stuff. And you know, when you go and tell somebody, oh, we're going to use some new technology, we don't actually know what it's going to do, but it's going to make our life seemingly easier in the future, they're not exactly going to go, you know, jump head over heels for that. It's easier for people to fit something in a mold, right? It's easier for people to say, oh, Snowflake, oh, it's kind of like Microsoft, or it's kind of like, well, this model, okay, let's give it a shot, right? So stuff like that, just keep that in mind, right? That's where this comes from. Right, okay. And also, like, so the innovations, the thing about the whole optimization thing is they're taking this core competency of this business model and then putting like optimizations on top of that, right? So if they have big data add-ons, and this is actually a big thing, right? So like when you work with big data, like Tableau's a really good product, that kind of stuff, right? But they, again, are very purpose-built to move up. But Snowflake, it's like, you know, oh, if you use this, if you use our this line of business, then you can have this add-on and you can have this. And it's like they silo their stuff. And there's a reason for that, actually. They do it mainly because, you know, companies themselves are siloed. You have specific divisions that do these things, right? So you want to cater your software to them. It's not sleazy or anything. It's actually a great business model. The problem is it addresses very strongly today's business model. So the trick here is, as soon as someone else says, you know what, we're going to go with this other product, and they become crazy in terms of efficiencies and stuff, like how Airbus is changing, right? As soon as that happens, that specific industry will start looking at what they're using, right? So a lot of these companies will use whatever they can as a competitive edge. So as soon as like a company does that, you know, say with Palantir, you know, some other company will probably jump on board, be like, why don't we try this as a pilot? And Palantir for sure is definitely cheaper, and their onboarding is way faster, like way faster. Like a lot of these SaaS products take months, if not a whole year, to onboard. There was one place where I onboarded like ServiceNow and some other SaaS like integrations, and it took like a whole year, and I left by the end of that, and I don't even know if it's done, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, so just keep that in mind. That's a big thing. Okay, the second question is, in a sense, Palantir will fill the gap because different data structure from a different application, correct? If so, is Palantir at the very least as big as SAP and Oracle in terms of adoption from mid and big company? Okay, I don't think I answered this fully over here, so hopefully Black Raider can see this video. But basically what I'm saying is, like, Palantir is starting off with their data analytics engine as a core competency, okay? So all the offerings are basically layered on top of that. Like, in terms of the company size, it's tough to say, right? I personally think it's more like a Google and like a Salesforce type of thing, like somewhere in between, just because its competency is more so big data and moving forward towards future technologies like AI. When I mean AI, I mean a lot of machine learning. Okay, AI is a really buzzwordy thing. But anyway, so yeah, there's a few things, right? So the pros by doing this kind of model where you're basing everything on like your engines and providing offerings based on that, is the pros is you get actually huge like ecosystem type products, right? So you get like you can take an entire product and ship it out as an ecosystem, and it's very highly technical. So what ends up happening is the offering is actually very robust, which actually is happening right now with Palantir, right? Their products are like super integrated and super, like, there's just a lot of stuff in there, right? So like it's hard for companies to say no. And I know they're also ramping up their sales stuff, so you know, we'll see. But yeah, so that's a few of the pros. Like it really depends. So like if they hit, like for example, like if you do it from that angle where you have like your core machine learning or your core sort of like analytics platform and you build up from there, your offerings are pretty much unlimited, like potentially endless, right? Because like it all depends on the data that comes in, and most of these companies, they're not data folks, so they're very freely willing to be like, you know what, here's our data, like we were trying to do this and this, and they were basically giving you ideas, right? Like I'll give you an instance. I was at a company which did like data centers and stuff like that, but they had like a small like a data integration sort of like setting, like we had a wing that did that, and the other companies would literally come to us and be like, look, we have all this stuff, we don't know what to do with it, but what we're trying to do is this, right? And then these guys would take that to shop it with other companies who have similar problems, and they had different problems, but we stuck all the problems together, that was a piece of software. So, you know, the options are basically endless. But if you silo yourself in a business model, then the options are not endless. Actually, it's quite limited, because it's whatever that specific silo is going to have an issue with, right? And most of the times, companies are, like I said before, trying to copy each other. So most of these silos will have similar problems, right? Not all the time, of course, but it's very common that they have problems that are very similar, right? So anyway, so yeah, and then if the pros come, I mean, maybe it'll be something like Google combined with like a Salesforce and a bunch of other stuff. I don't know, man. It's really hard to say. It's a completely nascent field, so it's you know, we're just gonna have to see. We're really early in this stuff, guys. I mean, I'm planning to hold this thing for at least 10 years. So okay, but the thing is though, if the cons are there, so here are the cons, right? The cons of this kind of stuff is, one, like I said before, you need to build up like a highly technical staff. You can't do like Palantir, Tesla, these kind of companies, they build every single thing from scratch, everything. Okay, that's actually very difficult. Now, I've always done that. Anywhere I've been, I've always tried to, you know, spin up as much code as possible. It's just much faster for me, and it's easier for the company, cheaper, it's way cheaper as well. But the thing is, you gotta understand, you know, I'm guilty of this too. If you do this stuff and you leave, who's gonna maintain your software, right? Software isn't something as simple as like you know, it's not like you know, once you get a car, you know how to do the oil change on it. It's the same thing over and over. It's not the same. It's actually quite different. There's like versioning issues. There's you know, there's actually, even from a basic level, skill set. So like if you know, there's software languages like Java and C# and all this other stuff that's used to make these software, right? You can find people that write that stuff, but there's different ways of writing code that other developers might subscribe to. Some people might be using the older method, some people might be using the newer method. Basically, like every 4 or 5 months, you become obsolete if you're in the software industry. That's why it's very important to keep yourself up to date. So when you spin up your own software as a company, you run the risk of saying, okay, I have a team that wrote this, but now half the team is gone and the people that designed it are gone. Who's going to maintain this stuff? So you have to hire people, and then that becomes a whole trial and error thing. So time is the ultimate currency, and for some of these companies, it depends on like how long they're going to waste on stuff like this. So the cons are, you know, if Palantir is spending all this stuff on their own, if there's a lot of turnover, if there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of quirky things like that, then you're screwed, man. Excuse me. Like your product won't get anywhere, right? That's the problem. There's nobody's gonna be maintaining it. Your versions that are going out to these companies who are buying your product are gonna suck. Your documentation is gonna suck. A lot of this stuff is gonna be a problem. In that case, I don't know, the market cap is gonna suck. Just it won't be much more than what it is now, I don't think. So you know, that's what I think. Okay, so third question is, in terms of being market leader, is Palantir market leader or of their target market, or are they currently in the lead but with some considerable competition? Sorry guys, or not at all? No, I don't know what other YouTubers are saying, but they are not the market leader in anything. I don't think, at least it's not my opinion, or it is my opinion that they're not in the market lead for anything. So I know that might seem like counterintuitive from all the other videos, but I'm investing in this company because it's a very early stage. It's a very early stage in a company that I think is going to be completely revolutionary in the software world. The way that they're building stuff, everything in-house, makes their software super cheap. It makes their software super fast. It makes them super technical and very catered to what you need, like throughout your company. But at the same time, they're just starting to do this stuff. This kind of model is not exactly there, okay? A lot of SaaS companies that you guys are comparing this to, SAP and all this other stuff, they have a team of like consultants and all. I know, I've been a few of them, right? That do this stuff, and once they leave, it's done. Like, they basically maintain the stuff that they offer to you as a client are small software differences, a small version changes. They'll move a button from here to here. It's a very easy trick. Okay, that's a dirty trick in the industry. If the dirtiest trick in the industry is you change the layout. So if you're a team that uses like a specific product, we'll be like, oh, we're making a major change to you guys, and we'll just flip the layout. We'll say, okay, oh, this screen here that you're using, now it's over here on this side. It's so stupid, but that's a classic case of companies saying, oh, the actual people that innovated and made this product are no longer here, right? With Palantir is not the case. Like, they're going from the foundation up, and if you see, their UI is actually quite simple. Even though there's a lot of work there, their UI is very simple, which is a sign that they want to show you all the technical chops that they have. They're not trying to say, you know, let's like add all the bells and whistles and, you know, have you like jerk off to it or something, right? But anyway, so that's, I don't think they're a leader in anything. We're still early for that. I think what's going to happen next is some of these companies, Snowflake and all these folks, are going to start building up platforms to compete with stuff like Palantir. Airbus is going to be a key one. I don't know where they're going to go with it, but these optimizations are going to be really key from other companies to see if they can compete with the core competency of Palantir and how fast Palantir can build up. So let's see. All right, fourth question. So Above Foundry, is it a software that can actually applicable for small companies? I mean, many small companies don't even use SQL for their data because they're relatively use small size data and prefer to store information in Excel. So is Foundry a software that can be as penetrative as Excel, or is it targeted for a mid-sized company? Okay. Before we get to the topic of SQL and stuff, Excel is an amazing piece of software, a piece of revolutionary innovation from like the 80s or whatever. And I don't think any software is going to have that level of penetration, or Excel, Microsoft Office. Okay. That stuff is like, it's very tough to compete with that. And the only one competing with that, in my opinion, to a good degree, is Google Docs. And those guys are like free, and it's hard to compete with Microsoft Office. So Excel is a huge stretch again, but Excel's not, you don't pay for it, right? At least not anymore, through licenses, of course. But for the most part, they're handed out for literally free or cheap from Microsoft to enterprises. So we can't compare it like that. However, with the SQL bit, okay, not all companies use SQL. Quite false. Now, the only companies that don't really use SQL are the people that are using different kinds of SQL or different kinds of QL. So basically, SQL is kind of like the backbone of the IT world. Okay, it's a very old piece of technology, but it's something that works very well. It's very reliable, and you know, that's why a lot of these big older software companies will have some SQL product. Microsoft has SQL Server. Oracle has Oracle DB, right? Like all these IBM even has DB2 as a SQL offering. Amazon has or AWS has something, stuff like that. There's stuff everywhere, and there's even open source stuff like MySQL, Postgres, and all these other things. So it is quite a backbone for application data. So any company that writes applications, any tech company that has any kind of application, 100% there's some form of SQL or another. Okay, the only time that there's not is if there's companies app focused, or if the company is like events focused or something different, right? Where you need like speed over some kind of reliability or whatever the case is. So then you could use something like NoSQL, which is just there's no, it's not tabular. Or you can use stuff like graph databases and stuff like that. So that's where the SQL point is, okay? So but it's a little irrelevant to this space though, okay? So that's more for application data for the most part. There are big data stuff that's stored in SQL, but it's more not for like queryable purposes, okay? It's either for some kind of like middle tier, like a middle layer before some kind of like a warehousing event or something. But what actually is there in the data side, like for big data, is it gets stored in some form of a data lake. Now all the cloud providers actually have this too. They have like Google, AWS, and GCP, AWS, and Azure have these data lake products to offer you. Like AWS has Redshift and MapReduce and all these other things to offer their clients. But there's another ones like Hadoop, which scales pretty horizontally. A pretty new one actually, which is really interesting if you guys want to take a look at it for research, is Apache HBase. HBase is actually kind of based on Google's offering of Bigtable, which is another big data like storage thing. So queryable storage thing. So SQL is irrelevant here, is the point I'm trying to make. There's other data storage, appliances that you use for this kind of event, and best believe companies are looking to every single possible option. Most companies right now are cloud native, so that's why, again, cloud is still growing, right? So they use like a product like Bigtable or BigQuery or whatever the case is from GCP, or Redshift from AWS and that kind of stuff. They use that kind of stuff, and they pay a very small like fee for their data to store in there. But it just works, right? You manage the support on the cloud provider side and stuff like that. Some of the older folks like banks and stuff will use things like Hadoop. That was a huge buzzword maybe like 5-6 years ago. So that's where the data is stored, guys. Okay. The thing here is Palantir will take that and they're a layer right above that. Okay, so this was the last question, so I'll finish off by saying this, like, okay, I do have to read more on Foundry, so I'll get back to that. But if you actually look at the stuff that they show you, it's more like an ecosystem. It's not like a specific product that does one thing. That's what I talk about optimizations, right? Where other companies are making a specific product that solves a problem. Palantir is saying, okay, well, we have this thing that does literally everything. Let's package it up as Foundry and give it to you, right? It does like their entire pipeline, basically, right? Actually, a very curious one, if you guys want to take a look, there's a thing called Airflow. Google offers it as well as a feature, as an offering, but Foundry has a very similar feature to Airflow, where it shows you like from the beginning of a particular thing on your supply chain or something all the way to the end, like a little diagram, right? And it shows you all the nodes that it touches and stuff, all the relationships with it. But anyway, so yeah, it's important we realize that like Palantir is like a platform company, right? They want to build ecosystems. They're not trying to build like singular products. So that's really the point I'm trying to make here. And like, you know, the thing is, another big thing that I like with Palantir is a lot of these projects that I've even been parts of, they take months, if not years, to finish. Okay, Palantir is like, yeah, don't worry, you know, buy our product, we'll come in a few weeks, you'll have our stuff working. Like, that's actually really crazy. Like, it's, you know, it's easy to say that it's like not that big of a deal, but it's quite a large deal. And most of these projects, when they get chalked up, they'll say, oh, it'll take 6 months, but in reality, it'll take a year, right? So when these guys are coming in, they're saying, yeah, it'll take like a month, and it's taking 2 weeks. That's like a level of complexity that goes into that kind of that product. It's almost like they have the skeleton key for big data. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? It's like they come in and they say, oh yeah, no matter what kind of big data set you have, you know, our startup time doesn't change that often. That's really scary, guys. That's like they clearly have some level of modeling that goes in, and it's very pervasive into like the, you know, the data structures and all this stuff, and it pulls it out and actually displays it. I'm still trying to investigate to find out how they do that, but that's what is crazy, right? Their startup time is really low. So in a way, these companies will say, why are we hiring a team of like 20 consultants and like a project manager when we can just hire these guys and cut the cost, or not to cut the time in like an eighth, right? Which is, by the way, a lot of time. Like, a lot of us charge per hour, so you know, it's quite expensive, right? So, you know, just keep that in mind. But anyway, man, Black Raider, wanted to answer your question. Those are beautiful questions. I hope I touched on as much as I could there. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. I really enjoy your guys comments. As far as the stock price, guys, like, I'll be honest, it's not that bothering to me. I don't care about what it is now as much as I care about what it is 5-6 years from now, right? Because I'm trying to traject this to like 10-15 years. So we're really in the early stages, guys. Maybe I'll make a video on like what the stock price is doing and why it's doing that. I think I have a few ideas, but until then, I think that's all I got. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for your time. Peace.